gonna be honest, I give up on keeping this place clean. There's just so much going on that I just keep making a mess, and every 2-3 days I try to clean it up, but it just never works out. But as you can see, we've been making a lot of progress. There's a lot of random stuff all around the garage, and that's because we've been kind of going at it off camera and just trying to make sure that we're getting all the little minuscule details done. But one of the things that we were focusing off camera was refurbishing our front hub assemblies. So as you can see, we have a brand new hub, we have brand new dust shields, and I even went ahead, removed everything from the spindle itself and refurbished it. So we got a brand new coat of paint. We went ahead and did some rust converters, so if there was any service rust, we converted that over, and then we went ahead and just did a nice clean coat of paint. We also got our new coilovers welded onto the spindle itself, so we got some nice clean welds there. And I even went ahead and removed this little rear dust cap piece, took that off, cleaned it up, repainted that as well, and then put everything back together. And just like the rear, we are running MTS Technic. This comes with the helper spring, the main spring. I even opted in for the camber plates at the top here, so that would be a nice little addition. Make sure it doesn't fall. But yeah, everything looks real good, and now we gotta switch over to the only other part of the car that isn't gonna be brand new itself. And that's gonna be this steering rack. So as you can see, we got this out of the car and it is really dirty. But what we're gonna go ahead and do is remove the boots on both sides, remove the inner tie rod, outer tie rod, replace everything with the new stuff. And then we also need to check if we have any blown seals in here. If we do, we're gonna have to get a new steering rack, but hopefully nothing comes of that. I don't see any leaking on this side or this side, so hopefully there's no issues there. And then we'll start assembling everything back up to the new subframe, which is buried in this pile right here. In this video, get everything back into the car. That is a goal. I don't want to make another part 3 of the front. I just want to finish it out, finish strong, and then get this car back on the road. So I cleaned up the steering rack a good amount. At least there's not just random oil everywhere, but the paint is coming off, hence why you're seeing this gray color now. Or I'm not sure if this is just dirt, but regardless, I think we're gonna have to take a pause on this for the time being, just because I don't have enough leverage to get the inner tie rods off on either end. So what we'll do with this is just mount it back into the car, and we can still replace both those components once it's back in. Shouldn't be much harder than it is. So we're just gonna go ahead and start working on the front subframe and start putting everything back together on that. So now that we have the subframe on the floor here, it should be pretty simple to get all of this put back together. You got the control arm that's gonna go right through this hole right here. Obviously these need to get pressed in. I'm gonna throw some grease around here and then smack these in real quick. There we go. Oh, almost had it. Ooh, that worked. Now it should be relatively easy to get this onto the actual control arm now. Handy dandy mallet. So this is the new sway bar for the front of the car. As you can tell, it is not adjustable. The one in the rear is adjustable, and we have it on the softest setting, but I didn't think we needed adjustment on the front since a lot more weight is gonna be on the front. So we got this. This is gonna go on the subframe. You guys will see that here in a second. And then we have our, what looks like the bushings, and it didn't come with any other hardware, so I'm glad that we got our other end links, and these will connect to the brackets that we have, and we also have new hardware for that. So we'll go ahead and get this tightened up, and one less thing to worry about. And just looking at the old one, it is so beat up and ugly, oh my god. But it looks like that dip goes down so it kind of matches the arch of the subframe. So I'm guessing it's gonna sit something like that. So on both sides. So I'm gonna turn this thing over, and we have our bushings right there. We need to throw some grease on those. We have our new end links. We'll get those connected. And I think, yeah, we have both of them in here. So should be good. Now, and it's been a busy few hours. We went ahead and modified the subframe a little bit because we ran into a slight issue. Now with this new reinforced subframe, this bracket holder is a little bit different. I'm not sure if they wanted to use bracket from an E36 or another model, but this didn't have the same type of gapping that this had, where you can plug the other side of the bracket into the subframe and then just bolt it down. This one actually had 2 bolt holes, so I had to drill out a gap and place it in there on both sides. This side is a little bit better than this one. I am going to make a reinforcement bracket just to hold it in. Now that we have the subframe ready to go, we can start putting everything back together. But before we do anything else, we do need to throw the steering rack in first. So we're going to quickly go ahead and do that, and then hopefully from there start putting everything back in, and then from there we can start addressing our inner and outer tie rods. Steering column back in, we got all the lines plugged back up, we got our little spline connector right there tightened back to how it was before. And if you are going to do this yourselves, make sure that the lines from the power steering pump, you put a new crush washer on there, otherwise it will leak. So now we will try to get the subframe up, mount this to the subframe so that we can start doing the tie rods. But easier said than done. This did take a lot longer than expected for me to put back in. So let's see if we get the subframe in a little bit easier. Also forgot to mention that our old engine mounts also need to go. We have a brand new set sitting somewhere over here. Yep. Right here in the midst of everything. But yeah, we need to replace these as well. So let's go ahead and get the old ones out. As you can see right down there. Honestly, this seemed a lot easier before I started, but once I got into it, there's so many little things that I need to replace that I'm probably already 10 hours into this project, and I don't even have the subframe in just yet. So just know I'm putting in work, but we got our new Gargistic poly bushings in. I don't know why it's not focusing. Now that we have everything ready to go, we should be able to just push this thing forward, get the subframe, or sorry, the steering rack around it, and then lift the entire thing up into place temporarily while we start bolting everything down. It's only been like 6 hours since my last clip, and that's because I've been struggling with every single bolt on this car and getting it back in. But luckily I did get the subframe back into the car. It's sitting almost completely tight. I got the steering rack lightly fitted back on, and overall looking good. I did run into an issue where my subframe bolts weren't really lining up with that little pin right there, but luckily got it on both sides, and the other side is a little bit tighter and got that flushed up. And as you can see, we also got our new bushings in, so that's sitting there. Now the only thing we really need to do is just mount up our lower control arms. That should be relatively easy. We need to do that on both sides, and then from there we can start tightening everything up and then installing what I think is going to be the most fun part and the most and one of the easiest things, are new coilovers. I'm really excited to get these on. I can finish by today or latest tomorrow because this video gotta go out Wednesday. Okay, so it's day 5 now, I think, of this video. We've been going at it, and I was actually able to get the inner tie rod loosened up yesterday before I call it quits for the night. So now we just need to get this thing out and we can insert the new one. And I just want to reiterate the joy that I have of knowing that all of our hardware is nice and clean. It has this nice little coating on it, so it looks nice. I don't know, I feel like these small details make a difference. And just to make sure our alignment isn't completely shot, what I'm just gonna go ahead and do is just try to match up the length on our old tie rod with the new one. And at least then it won't look too wonky before we get an actual alignment. Now that we got the new tie rods on, the new boots, we can go ahead and toss these old junk ones to our junk box. Also went ahead and took the time to mount up the mount for the control arm. Got our hardware in there, and now we just need to do our sway bar end links, mount those up to the sway bars, and then from there I think I'm just gonna tighten up the front subframe bolts max and then leave the rear ones, because we do have to reinforce our sway bar bracket, and I have a bracket that's coming in for that, just so since we had to modify this and make it a little bit weaker, we don't want this to snap off one day, since this is a way larger sway bar than the stock one. So we'll go ahead and update that. We'll go ahead and switch those out once the time comes, but for the time being, we'll just mount these up, and everything on the subframe should be tightened up. Now, after hours and hours, finally got everything tightened up, and all the bolts should be back in the car. So we got our end link sway bar, we got our lower control arms, everything is buttoned up, as well as our steering rack, and we also got our front subframe bolts tightened up as well. So now everything should be working in unison, and I can already feel the difference in a lot of these suspension components. Like, everything else before was very, very sloppy, but now just using this tie rod, for example, before this would just dangle no matter what, but as you can see, wherever I leave it now, it kind of holds its own weight, which is nice, and you can also feel it in kind of the amount of pressure it takes to move it around. So that's a very good sign. And then I'm also hoping to have a noticeable difference with all the new bushings, like the subframe bushing, the control arm bushings, and so on. We also got our engine mounts in place, so they're not tightened up or anything just yet. We're gonna lower the engine and then tighten those up. So we have our hardware just sitting, waiting for that. Make sure I don't lose this. Now that we got everything else situated, we can finally go ahead and throw our new coilovers in. And honestly, this is the part that I've been most excited about. So as you can see, we finally got our new suspension in, and it looks amazing. Super excited that we finally have this in. So unfortunately, this is where we're gonna have to stop today, just because there's a few parts that we're missing, kind of like the dust caps that go on top of here. Obviously, we don't want any dust or grime to get in the grease that's inside the hub itself. And then we also are waiting for some more hardware to finish out this project. So as you can see, we finally got our new suspension in, and it looks amazing. Super excited that we finally have this in. And one thing that we also have all of our new parts. Unfortunately, this is where we're gonna have to stop today, just because there's a few parts that we're missing, kind of like the dust caps that go on top of here. Obviously, we don't want any dust or grime to get in the grease that's inside the hub itself. And then we also are waiting for some more hardware to finish out this project. But we got the main goal of today's video accomplished, and that was to get the entire subframe back into the car with all the new parts, new hardware, new bushings, and everything else. And we accomplished that. Thank God. It took forever. This was probably one of the most tiring videos to make. Yeah, so many hours spent in this garage just trying to get this done in this single video. I wish I didn't make that mistake, but we got it done, and now we can move on to basically buttoning up this car and getting it back on the road, which I'm really excited. But yeah, I know this was a lot, and I know I didn't go into too much detail as to how I did certain things, so forgive me for that, but hopefully you guys stay tuned for the rest of the videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.